Hello, and here we are. Mossflower, finally. Mossflower is probably the best, objectively, probably the best book in the series. Um, as I mentioned before, it does a really lot of good setup for the Redwall history. It's both expansive yet not too all over the place. It knows what it wants to accomplish and does it well. It establishes the lore a whole lot more better than the original Redwall, where you kind of feel like Redwall, he's still feeling out the world and the characters. This one has a very clear goal and it does it really well. And it'll contradict and a few things from Redwall, the first book, but we'll get into those when we get into it. The biggest thing you'll you'll see is kind of the idea of Redwall being there in the beginning. In the first chapter of Redwall, we get the sense that maybe Redwall was already there, but that may just be kind of a weird history thing where it's assuming things have already been. So the establishment of Redwall is because of Martin, not Martin, and Martin is directly involved in Redwall's founding rather than its um, just its protector in a sense. So we'll get into that. But so how this book opens is we have um, what will be a another trend of kind of us having characters tell the story to another character that did not directly witness the events. In this case, we have Bella of Brockhall, the badger, telling this story to Little Mouse, and we'll reveal who the mouse is by the end. But she's telling this story of how Mossflower came to be to this young mouse. That is the context of this story. And so we open in winter, which I always really liked. It gives again another bit of a setting difference between what is in Redwall versus this book, which while we're not going to be in this cold, harsh environment long, it still sets it apart by having it be a winter environment and indicates kind of, rather than kind of this joyous kind of nature we open with in Redwall, and then it's going to get dark later. We have already the sense of foreboding, of oppression, the sense that things are not quite as they are as we see Martin walking his way through the snow. And kind of like, oh, things could be a whole lot better, not only for Martin, but we're going to see with Ben Stickle and his family. And so just the setup that things are not as they should be in winter being used as kind of the opening backdrop for that, and the snow falling down kind of being uh, a sign of that. Reminds me of The Lion, Witch in the Wardrobe, where we have, right, always winter, never Christmas sort of thing. And while we're not going to have that here, of course, it's not quite that dark, but it's opening on a much darker kind of. We're already in the midst of the things going wrong, or things are wrong. So we have that, and so we have our first big character introduction to Martin. And Martin already feels quite a bit different from Matthias. Matthias is ignorant. He's um, much more of an eager soul. We have a bit more innocence to the character. Meanwhile, Martin already feels jaded. He already feels like he's been through stuff. We see that by the way he walks. We see that with the fact that his sword is rusted and that he's just trying to get through to his next destination, which I don't think he even knows where he's going, right? He doesn't even know what he's doing. He just wants to move away from whatever uh, problems are plaguing him in his life. And we're going to get a reveal of that in Martin the Warrior in the backdrop of that. And so, and we're going to get into, I think there are some problems with Martin the Warrior in terms of it being a bridge, but it at least gets the sense that Martin and Mossflower are still connected, at least in the sense of you still get the sense that Martin has been through something already, and Martin's going to deal with that, however good or bad. We'll come to it as I have a few problems. Still good book, but I have a few problems with it. But but it's but yeah. So Martin has been through stuff. Let's just leave it at that for now. But we also have the establishment of kind of a setting of Cotier versus the Woodlands. We have the fact that we're in, as I kind of mentioned with the oppressiveness, we're underneath already all the repressive regime, and we see what that looks like with Blackie and Split Nose. I think it's Black something. I'm forgetting what his name is. It's Split Nose, and then it's Blackie something. Um, and we have these two really being our first symbols of just how bad things are. They're stealing even just the loaves of bread that are left. There's not even October ale or cheese. No October ale, especially with the hedgehog. No, no. But we get that, and also just even like um them making the comment about maybe even the baby hedgehogs being taken away, which is really hard to think about, right? So we have the establishment of that. We have our family representing just how bad things have gotten, and then we also have Earthclaw as our first major mole of the series. We had, of course, Formal from the original books, but I don't think Formal gets a name in that book. Does Formal get a name in the Redwall books? The first Redwall book. I cannot remember if he gets a name. But so we have our first officially named mole that's not a formal in Earthclaw, and we have that same kind of stallenness, and he's going to lead them away from the oppressiveness toward this kind of safe place of safety called Quorum. But one of the things I like about Quorum is it kind of indicates that this is just a temporary stopgap, that it's really not it'll be a reprieve, but it's not the magic fix-all to everything. Instead, we're going there because it's the best way to escape the oppression for now, but who knows, they may get found out sooner or later, whatever. Things could go really bad, really south, even with Quorum in the picture. And so, we're still waiting for things to get better, and this is merely a temporary stopgap to that. and then we have Martin being arrested and being taken, and we see just how much of a fighter he is, and that he's willing not to put up with all the weasels' stupidity and their oppressiveness and their and he manages though still to get captured and brought before uh, the Wildcats and stuff. And what I really like about uh, this part is there's a bit more subtleness going on. Um, Still somewhat basic, but I really like Verdaga, Green Eyes in all this. So we get our introduction to Verdaga, who's very much like the old um, king who has maybe an oppressive ruler and not a great person, but at least has decorum, at least has sense of mind, has at least sort of like a sense of responsibility for what he has conquered and still desires to do, at least somewhat decently. And there's almost a sense then that part of the reason why things have gotten so bad is while um, it's been oppressive since the Wildcats took over, that a lot of this is Sarmina's fault. Sarmina's the one pushing all this, she's the one in charge. Verdaga's sick, Gingervier can't really do much of anything and does not have the desire to. He's very weak, not very much a warrior at all, has no taste for even politics as such. And so we get the sense that there's kind of the middle, which is Verdaga, which is still this oppressive ruler but has wisdom and sense, but unfortunately what he's been uh, given as children is one who cannot really act and won't really cannot act, and one who will act but acts even with greater ferocity, greater sense of pride, self-importance, and just overall like doesn't really seem to care what happens to these Woodlanders at all, that she has no responsibility other than to herself and building her own power. And we get that um, through the way all three of those characters interact with each other. And then we get and then we get our two side villains for the rest of the book, which are going to be Ashleg and Fortunata. Fortunata, of course, falls very much in line with Sela from earlier, but has been given a position of power because she has aligned herself very well with Sarmina. And and then we have Ashleg, who's very much um, the second in command counselor, advisor role, but is also very much, but also comes across as kind of, in fact, they both do. They both come across as very like, not very thoughtful characters in the sense of they're pretty much just there to prop up Samina and give her power and legitimacy. And so they're not very thoughtful of themselves, and the only reason they exist in any capacity is because Samina has given them power of herself, and Ashleg may have been at one time even deeply loyal to Verdaga, but has now just given up any sense of loyalty to pursue more power with Samina, and Samina's just very she's persuasive mainly because she has the dignity, but also the under. She has both a false dignity, this appearance of being very regal, but also having this very devious and very cutthroat, very vicious side that keeps everyone in line. And so there's only so much that Verdaga and Fortunata can really act out on their own, and they come across as actually pretty whiny and wimpy in the long run. Uh, and so then, so the big, but the two big things we've got to carry away from, but then we have our big, and then we have. I'm going to go back to our big introduction, our most important introduction, second most important introduction in the book in just a minute. But then from following there, we have um, eventually Martin being brought before uh, Verdaga, Samina, and Gingerbeer. And again, all three of those personalities we can see clearly um, um, clashing. And I do want to take back a little bit on um, Gingerbeer. He has some wisdom and he has sense to him, and it's not like he couldn't um, do stuff if he was actually given the authority. But I don't think it's partially because he's just not that interested in it. It could be less that he has the capability; it's just he lacks any sort of drive or ambition to really carry out being the next Verdaga. And he could be a better Verdaga, but he just doesn't have his father's tenacity. And in some sense, while good, that he's not the harshness of his father, he doesn't have the ability to carry that out. And so, but we have all three, and Verdaga takes the middle ground between him and his daughter. And Gingerbeer, of course, doesn't really say anything. But Sarmina can't stand this, that fact that she's overridden by her father, which really tells you part of her character is she just doesn't even listen to reason or to sense at all. Verdaga uh, um, Verdaga has very clear understanding of how to assert one's authority without being oppressive, and she just doesn't. She cannot see anything other than uh, wrath and vengeance, and let me just take what I can when I can, and just dismissive of any sort of middle ground solution. Um, and so she she not only acts, um, and one could argue that she may even have a point in some sense of not letting Martin live, but the real thing that really just shows how vindictive she is the destroying Martin's sword. I think that really kind of just shows you how much she dismisses anything. It's like she doesn't even think for a second the consequences of that action, the rashness of it. It's like Martin tells her to her face, right? Your father made a just decision, but yours. I think he even says he made a just decision, but you made the right one, because he was like, basically, yeah, you wanted to kill me. All right, you didn't get your way. Now just wait till I have a chance to kill you. And she takes Martin's threat just not seriously at all. And Verdaga recognizes what courage looks like, and part of the and Sarmina doesn't even have because in the end she's actually a coward. And we'll see that with the how she has decided to poison her own father, that she'll just seize power without by any means necessary, and doesn't because in the and so because of that she doesn't really see anything beyond her own what can be gained in the moment, um, and doesn't really think about possible consequences. And it's very telling just how harsh she is, and I think she's delightfully harsh. Um, Clooney can come across as a little too cut right down the middle bad guy, but Sarmina seems to me like there's a bit more of an edge to her, and I think her cowardice um, winks much more than Clooney. Clooney at least has fought battles. He has knows that he still has power and he still has and he's devious, but he he'll but he still acts as a strong commander, as one even willing to lead his armies in a sense, and he's not always at the back. Unlike Sarmina, Sarmina will see is very much from the back leader, and that puts her in somewhat in contrast to Clooney. And we're going to see that as the story goes. One of the other things is that um, uh, we see Gingerbeer as a one. I'm trying to think. Is that all I wanted to say? I thought I was going to add something on Gingerbeer. I think I've said enough on all four of those, and so, but yeah, we we see Martian's hardness already coming through. The way he's able to stare down Sarmina, that he's already developed everything he needs in order to face Sarmina and even look her straight in the eye. And I like that description of it just being like that moment where their eyes meet. And I think for a moment there's the idea that maybe she is afraid. Maybe she does remember see that and think, "Oh no, what have I done?" but easily dismisses it. And that's kind of the problem. Is she doesn't take into consideration that moment with Martin. She has maybe a fleeting glimpse of what's to come, but she's unable to process that, and even then laughs at it. She mocks it with derision, and that's her downfall. Her downfall is not to heed what she sees right in front of her. And that's what one of the things I do like is, unlike Redwall, where we kind of don't have as much of a meeting between Clooney and Matthias prior to their final battle. This one has an immediately, here we are. Here we have the villain versus the hero, and we've established it right clearly from the beginning that they have seen each other, and one is ready to make it his life's goal to directly defeat her because of what, not only because of her just evil nature, but what she has done to him directly, which is insult him as a warrior, as a mouse, as one who has seen and done great things. And she has dismissed it all, and he's basically telling her, you won't dismiss that, and you'll live to regret it. And so we have a direct confrontation, which I really like. And so it's I think, a little better established than the what will be the dynamic between um, Samina and between what was Matthias and Clooney. So that's better. I think that creates a much better setup. So that's so we have some dynamics and some stuff going on that's a little more already setting up things a little more clearly, concisely, a little more subtly, a little bit more nuanced, and from a different perspective that's a lot more intriguing, I think, on a already from the beginning, rather than the general setup we get in Redwall. So already things are put into place in motion quicker and more efficiently and with more subtlety and better executed than I think Redwall has already done. Okay, now that we've gotten through most of that stuff, we now have to talk about the greatest, or one of the top 5 greatest characters in all of Redwall, um, which is Gomph, the Mouse Thief. Everything about this character is so wonderfully executed. Gomph is actually, if you know anything about some of the few insights that we have ever gotten on Redwall, is that Gomph is most like Brian Jakes himself. You said that was one of the ones where you get a clear inspiration for a character in Redwall, is that Gomph is basically a young version of himself, the cheeky, wild, kind of like mischievous guy he was when he was young. And it's so delightful. It's the rhyming, he just comes off with the top of his head. And we're getting this is something we'll get a whole lot more of, is song and poetry in Redwall, is than we got in Redwall. The only Redwall poem we really get, of course, is the major poem for the discovery. So it's more of a riddle poem than anything. But the little ditties and poems that Gomph comes out with are kind of our first kind of slowly moving to the more song side of Redwall, and they're so delightfully executed, and like, and I like them because they're very much like, you can clearly tell the character is coming up with this off the top of his head, and they don't. I think they rhyme some, but they're not direct as clear rhymes as sometimes we often get generally, and they actually really work. It's where the rhyming, even when it's there, is not like a great rhyme, but it works because the character's just so delightfully just, he's just thinking whatever cheeky phrase, and they just happen to rhyme. It's more about cheeky phrases rather than the Gomph being clever in his rhymes, but still managing to still convey that in a nice poem-like fashion to where they feel very natural. So it's clever, but it doesn't come across as too clever or too dry. And so, and it's, out of all the kind of songs and poems, I think Gomph's poems come off as just the most kind of like just clearly just natural, flowing, and it comes from a very real character perspective um, on life, and him just willing to make jokes and comments off the top of his head about just anyone and everything, and sometimes it comes off in full poems, sometimes it comes off in witty banter, sometimes it comes across off through just him making silly voices, and particularly we have him just interjecting one stupid little comment into the argument between the two weasels that continues to set him off, where he says "big fat robber," and and the weasels who have already been at it, that just sets them off, and they're all already all over each other. And Gonk just chuckles and then just creates another poem off the top of his head, and it's really delightful. Um, and so our introduction to Gonk is really just kind of one of the most lovely little things where he's very much he comes across as a bit. He's of course also inspired somewhat by Robin Hood like character, one who's loyal and but is willing to steal from the poor to give to the rich. But he also comes across as a little more like uh, mischievous about it. But I guess Robin Hood could be mischievous too, but it really gets overplayed with Gump, and it's that delightful thing of him just enjoying life and enjoying every little moment, even when things are harsh. Like him, even later when he catches up with uh, the spikes in the family, he jumps up and like scares Ben, and he's like, it's like him willing to not take any seriousness whatsoever, and on even kind of the what is very harsh and difficult times. And it really comes down to him being grateful for just life itself. And like it's revealed that the spikes basically raised him as an orphan, and so we really get the sense that Gomp is just a product of chance and circumstance, and he's really just grateful to have that, and so he's just going to take every chance of delight he can, whether it be annoying his friends or willing to steal underneath the noses of weasels and ferrets and stuff. That he'll just take any opportunity because he knows, like, he could have died a long time ago, so might as well enjoy life. Life is short. Enjoy it while you have it, and so he's very much grateful to just be alive. And so I really like that about the character. And we're gonna see though that what I like about him is though despite his nonchalant attitude, we already begin to see just how much he cares, especially over little ones like Ben and Goody's children, and the delight he gives them in giving them joy and hope, that he's not just doing it for his own sake. He's doing it because he actually does want to bring joy and goodness into the life of others around him. He may do it in a somewhat cheeky fashion, and he may not always have the right response to the circumstances, and maybe he should stop and take it a little more seriously. But we're gonna see later just how resourceful he is, how loyal he is, and so that gets bounced up by that he's not just a fool, um, that he's not just incapable of. He just puts himself in circumstances, and whatever happens happens. No, he's also taught himself how to deal with situations when they do get difficult, and that he can get out of circumstances, and he's ready to do whatever he can to help those around him. So we're going to see that side to him as well. So it's not just, oh, me, little me, and no one else. me against the world. No, it's for the benefit of others as well. And so, yeah, I'm trying to think, is there anything else I wanted to talk about? This may come across as a little rambly, but I'm just trying to get some uh, go a little again beyond the surface of kind of what we're seeing in these books, because it can very much read like general heroic fiction, but I think there's a lot of delightful stuff underneath it, and I think Mossflower in particular is going to be more emblematic of of where Brian Jakes has evolved as an author, and so we're already seeing that. I think already we have Gomp being kind of the more developed, fleshed out characters, and we already see the dynamics between all the characters being fleshed out more, and things being set up very much more concisely and clearly, and it may not have um, the kind of hitful kind of language that we get, that kind of pump that we get from the beginning of Redwall. This one takes much more its time and is much more drawn out, but it works, I think, better in terms of long form, where the story is going, and how it develops things much more grander story wise and much more deeply. And so we'll get into that as we go. So there we are. There is the first 4 chapters of Redwall, Mossflower. And so, yep, please pick this one up. If you don't pick up probably any other Redwall book, I would suggest this one. This one is the one where you can really dive in and really have a fun time with all the characters. And the storytelling. So, join me next time as we go deeper further and see what happens to Gingerbeer and Martin. Oh, and I guess that's one other thing to touch on. So Verdaga is poisoned and he dies, and Sarmina locks away her brother. I do find it interesting that she doesn't kill him, but I think the only reason Sarmina doesn't kill him is because she just has no reason to, and it's not going to benefit her in any way. And she's doing this as a front to gain power, and so she really doesn't care whether or not she kills Gingerbeer. Gingerbeer doesn't have the strength or the ability to lead in her mind any sort of rebellion against her. It's very clear that Sarmina has already established her power among all the characters. She's the one who's been driving further and further the Woodlanders to hardness, and has allowed her soldiers to take over and do whatever the heck they want. So of course they're going to be loyal to her because she just gives them hands over whatever they want, and so he has no basis to challenge her, and so I don't think she sees even any benefit in killing him, and so it's better just to leave him and not have to deal with it anymore, and so just lock him up. My hands are clean sort of thing, a kind of false, of course, my hands are clean kind of thing. But yeah, I think that's part of it, is she's just like, nah, not gonna deal with it anymore. I have more important things to do, and Gingerbeer's nothing to me, so why waste any more breath? So, hopefully, we'll see what happens to both of them, and can they get out of the pickle? especially Martin. So we'll see. Bye.